record your risk record and associated bow ties. The configuration of your company's processes and timeframes is managed in the video on the risk configuration. To be able to record your risk record and bow ties, you will need to be set up with the user type manager or head investigator, and be given the permission to write risks by your system administrator. After logging into your SERA system, you will need to navigate to the Risk Management tab. Click on the link in the underlying grey menu bar to Risks at any time. This will navigate you back to the Risk Management home screen where you can view all of your current records. At the top of the page you will have access to the Raise a New Record button. Your previous records will display in the table below, to ensure continued review of the threats and controls your company has recorded. The following video will step through the process of raising a record and completing the bow tie. When raising a new record, the following fields will be entered by the Safety Action Group member or moderator, who will be selected as the risk manager for the record. Additional details can be recorded once the record has been created. The initial planning step requires the following components to be entered: the title of the risk assessment record, the related event category, the date the record is being raised, the risk type, the name of the Safety Action Group member or moderator who will be the risk manager, the responsible company and department for the record, and any related stakeholder departments. After recording the details, click the button Raise Risk to create the record. You will note that the status of your risk record has been set as in planning. A unique record identifier will display with the ID number, risk, and current year. Any additional information can now be recorded by the SAG member or moderator, along with additional risk managers within the risk record. Remember to save regularly while you are working on the record. This will ensure there is no loss of data. If you have moved away from the record or logged out at any stage, you can navigate back to the record from the Risk Management home table. Click on the ID number within the table to open the details page. From here you will record the additional information. Under the Context field, record a description of the risk scenario. Under the Risk Identification field, enter the risk comments. Any related stakeholder departments can be included within the record at any time through the process. Hold down the Control button while selecting additional departments. Ensure at this stage that you have included the safety team as stakeholders to your record to ensure they are kept informed of your progress and to provide any obvious feedback during the process. Don't forget to save before moving away from the page. An email will be sent to the person whenever they are included as an additional risk manager or stakeholder in the record. Having defined the general framework of the record, the following steps are initiated by the SAG member or moderator. 1. Define the hazards and top events. 2. Identification of threats. 3. Assessment on potential consequences. And 4. Evaluation of existing and required defenses in the bow tie section. To enter this information, the risk managers will need to click on the link in the grey menu bar to the Threats and Controls page. From here, click on the button to create the bow tie analysis. You will find the navigation bar with the 7 steps at the top of the page. This will assist you in moving to the different sections within your bow tie, as you add more threats and consequences to the hazard. In step 1, you can select from a predefined list of hazards. Or alternatively, record the new hazard in the text entry field below. Click the Save button to save your details and remain on the current page. Click the Next button to save your details and move to Step 2. In Step 2, record the top event. This describes the moment of loss of control, or the moment where the hazard is released. Once again, click to save, or click the Next button to save and move on to Step 3. From Step 3, we record the identified threats. These are the possible causes that may lead to or contribute to the loss of control. Select from the current list of threats, and enter in the specific details of the threat. Select from the drop-down lists under the related fields, for each of the threats you have listed. To add more threats to your list, click on the link for Add Threat. You can click on the cross to remove any of your entries while building your bow tie. Once again, click to save, or click the next button to save and move on to step 4. In step 4, identify and record the consequences. A top event often leads to a number of consequences. A consequence is an event or chain of events that result from the release of the hazard. Select from your company's predefined list of consequences and provide more specific details on the nature of the consequence. Your company will have already established the initial risk for the selected consequences. Click the link to add more consequences to your bow tie. Click the Save or Next button to save and move on to Step 5. In Step 5, for each of the threats, record the barriers or controls already in place or required to prevent or reduce the probability of each threat. Again, you will find several related drop-down lists for selection where appropriate. To record more controls for each threat, simply click the link to add preventive controls. Click to save, or the next button to save and move to Step 6. You will not be able to move to Step 6 until each threat has at least one preventive control recorded. In Step 6, you will record your recovery controls. Assuming a top event will occur, it is important to identify all measures which need to be in place to limit the consequences. In any of the additional fields, select from the drop-down lists where relevant. Once all controls have been recorded for each consequence, select the remaining likelihood and severity. This will display the residual risk score and risk level for each consequence. Click the Save or Next button to save and move on to Step 7. In Step 7, you have the option to record escalation factors associated with any of the controls recorded. Escalation factors are conditions that lead to increased risk by defeating or reducing the effectiveness of controls. This information examines how the control may be degraded over time. After entering any possible escalation factors, click the Save button. At this step, you can click to view the bow tie. This will open an additional browser window to view the bow tie structure. You can return to any step in the process at any time to make additional changes. The planning process is now completed and ready for the SAG member or moderator of the risk record to advance the status to in progress. To do this, you will need to return to the risk details page. Click the Exit button to return to the Threats and Controls page. Then click on the Risk Details link in the gray bar. In order to ensure that the risk assessments are processed in a timely manner, the period for the planning phase is limited at 3 months. At the end of 3 months, an email reminder is sent to the risk manager and any stakeholders, as a reminder on the due date. The risk manager and safety management personnel will decide the status of the risk assessment if it is not processed within 3 months. For exceptional cases, the process can be extended by informing the safety manager. An email to the safety team from the risk weblog is to be recorded, stating the reasons for requesting the extension. To do this, navigate and open the risk record. Click on the weblog link in the gray menu bar. Select the safety team under the stakeholder group. Record your email in the text area, including the reasons for your request. Click on the Save Send button below to submit your email. A log of your email is recorded under the weblog. While the status is marked as in progress, the risk manager can include relevant safety action groups or individuals as stakeholders to the record. The stakeholders can be given read-only or write access to the record. Stakeholders with read-only access will need to use the weblog to record any comments or feedback to the risk managers. Simply record the comments in the text area and click the Save Send button. If stakeholders are set with write access, then they are able to update or enter in any details to the bow tie as they deem relevant. The risk manager will receive notification when any feedback or updates are recorded. When all stakeholders have provided their feedback, the risk manager will then mark the bow tie as complete. The Complete Bow Tie button on Step 7 will save and display the bow tie details on the Risk Control and Treatments page of the risk record. The hazard and top event along with each of the threat and consequence descriptions are saved, including the threat code and consequences fields. You can use the arrows to move between each of the threats and consequences. The barriers identified in Step 5 of the bow tie are saved as controls under the specific threats. Where there is more than one barrier, use the arrows to move between each of the controls recorded. The recovery measures identified in Step 6 of the bow tie are saved as controls under the specific consequences. Where there is more than one recovery measure for the consequence, use the arrows to move between each of the controls recorded. Risk managers can enter in any additional information and set the control managers responsible for each of the barriers and recovery measures recorded from the bow tie. Any identified escalation factors from Step 7 of the bow tie are saved under the escalation factors field below each of the individual controls. Actions may be recorded under each control if a control is not currently in place or where action needs to be taken by the responsible control managers. All of the threats, consequences, controls and actions will also display on the risk record details page. Click the plus symbol at the beginning of each threat or consequence in the table to expand and view the associated controls. Click on the ID to navigate directly to the threat, consequence or controls to update or view the details. Changes can still be made to the bow tie at any stage, and when marked complete, will update the details on the threats and controls page of the risk record. While the record has a status of in progress, the risk manager can then request a check from the safety department to confirm all details have been entered correctly. Members of the safety team will be monitoring the risk records and can easily identify the risk records requiring their feedback before progressing to the next step in the process. The column in the table highlights in red the records requiring their review. After checking that all areas within the record comply, any member of the safety team can mark the checkbox as checked and save. A log recording the date, time and user details is recorded. The record is now ready for review. Once the risk record status is in progress, the risk manager can request management level review from within the business when required. The button to request review can be found at the bottom of the page and is only visible when the record status is in progress. The risk manager will need to click on the button, Request Review, to select users or stakeholder groups required to review the record. Please note that all users selected must review the record before it can then be submitted for final approval. Therefore, do not select users who are not required to review the record, as this will create issues if the record is ready for approval and the user has not logged in to review. Record the message to be included in the notification email to the manager selected to review the record. Click Send. A log of the users selected will display and the status of the record will now change to awaiting review. Each manager selected will receive an email notification and will then need to log into SERA to review the record. After logging in, the managers can access the records requiring their review from their Overview tab under the Review Records table. After reviewing the record, the manager will need to select the Yes button and record any feedback to the risk managers. Then click on the Save Review and exit the record. The risk managers will receive notification once all managers have reviewed the record, and the status will change to Reviewed. The record can now be submitted for final approval. The risk record will require final approval. The authorization to approve risk records is a permission given to selected personnel by your system administrators. To submit for final approval, scroll down to the bottom of the details page to the Submit for Approval button. A pop-up window will display. Click OK. A field will display to select the authorized approval officer within the company, who is responsible for ensuring all risks are managed. Click and select the name from the drop-down list or users to approve, and then you must click Send. A log of the request will display on the risk record. The user selected to approve the risk must log into SERA and navigate to the risk record. The record can be easily found on their Overview tab under the table for records requiring their review and approval. Navigate to the record by clicking on the record ID. At the bottom of the risk page, the user can approve or not approve the record. Clicking on the radio buttons for yes/no will open a comments field so that feedback can be recorded by the authorized officer and included in the email notification back to the risk managers. Click on the Save Log button to save the details. If the approving officer has selected yes and saves, the record will update the status as approved. A PDF copy of the current record is attached as confirmation of all threats, consequences, barriers and recovery measures approved at the time. If the approving officer has selected no and saves, then the system will save any comments as a log and notify the risk managers. The status will revert back to in progress.